I'm here with lead technical designer Dan Tracey, and we are talking, what else? The Hull series. Hey, Dan.
Hey, how's it going, Ben?
Not too bad. Seen a lot of each other in the last couple of days as we
totally.
fought with cargo numbers and ship sizes. And
it's a lot of back and forth, right?
Yeah.
Development and work in progress.
I think people would be very surprised to see how much goes into getting the ship out on the website.
Yeah, tell me about it. So what do you want to talk about?
Well, I guess we're going to talk about the development of the Hull series. And I will kick it off because I was actually the person who initially kind of invented them as backstory for a jump point. You know, they were originally just a riff on Larry Niven's general product hulls, when there were like 4 or 5 different sizes of those in his known space world. He was like, oh, we should do that too. So I figured, we'd have like 5 different bulk containers. I think it was A through, it was 4 originally. It was A through D. It's in the MISC article in Jump Point. And then, we pitched that to the community. You guys voted for it. And then you came in and made it cool.
Well, it was a group of us anyway, when we were all talking about how can we actually set up like an interesting design for a ship that can actually hull cargo in more zero-G oriented environments, right? We came up with actually, and you were even in on that meeting too, when we actually came up with this interesting concept. It's kind of been around with other sci-fi shows to begin with, but is like more the kind of external cargo placement of these things. And of course, like that has its own inherent side effects of like exposing your cargo so that it could be shot, but if you're in safe UE space, or you have like a lot of people that are escorting your particular craft, then you shouldn't have a worry about it. So,
well, I hear about that worry all the time, and I figure you're not a very good pirate if you're trying to gun down the cargo.
Exactly. But that's I guess the benefit and the drawback of the Hull series is with each one of them having all of its cargo on the exterior. That means that you can actually have tremendously more cargo than a lot of the other ships. And I see that as like a lot of people have the growing concerns that we have maybe the wrong metrics. And I would have to say for some of them we did, because of the fact that we had the measurements of some of the ships were actually originally weighted for what we called freight units at the time, which was actually in terms of the XYZ dimension, which was 0.25 by 0.25 by 0.25, which actually equated out to, I think it was 1.1. I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but that was, 0 point whatever. So those were actually in a very, very small cubic dimension for each one of the particular interior nodes that we're actually developing. And you can see it on actually the Grabby Hands demo that Calyx did, which actually has all of these internal item placement nodes. You can actually think of it very similar to like a lot of other similar game titles that just have a 2D grid that are just cells of like different things that are being placed. Ours is actually going in 3D, right? So each one of those particular node bases are 0.25 meters. So that way you could put like a gun or a cup or whatever, or even like Mr. Lamp inside of your cargo box, and then he fills his particular dimension inside of that particular crate. Now, for a lot of the ships, 0.25 kind of doesn't make a lot of sense because they're anywhere between, 10 meters to 20 meters to 100 meters in terms of their length or width or height for their particular depth. So to make it easier on us, like we were just measuring out a lot of them with the simple primitives of like the box dimensions of just in 1 meter grids. But also for our metrics for what we wanted to have cover height is 1.25. So you can see with a lot of different numbers bouncing back and forth that sometimes it gets lost in translation when we're actually trying to give it all to either like turbulent or to community or internal between all our design departments, and even with animation, all the numbers might get lost. So we're trying to rectify that right now by actually specifically measuring the internal game dimensions of these things, right? So as long as it's physically accurate, we'll give you guys the actual dimensions that you'll need. And the thing that we want to hit most of all is making sure that we have the Hull series as capable as like the Freelancer Max or the Banu Merchantman or even the Caterpillar, right? So every one of those ships has their own kind of equivalent, but of course with the ones that are not the Hull series, those are all encased on the internals of it, right? Except for maybe the Starfarer.
Yep.
But
We can't
with
talk
that,
about the Starfarer yet.
but with those, we wanted to make sure that the hulls were comparable, and then the Hull E being gargantua, being able to hull the most amount of cargo that you can possibly actually move on with. So, like, sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent there, but you know.
No, I think that's the sort of thing people find interesting.
As you can tell, I wanted to get that off my chest because I've been seeing that from multiple different angles. So
it's all his fault. No, by the time you folks see this, the corrected Dan here has actually gone through and measured pretty much every ship that we actually have in the game and made some estimates for ones like the merchantmen that are not in the game yet. So we'll have corrected numbers on the website. We're going to show you both the numbers in terms of meters and the numbers in terms of SCU. So you will have all the data.
cool.
These ships are immensely modular. I mean, that was kind of the idea going in. You can put whatever sort of box fits in them. Tell me about what our vision for boxes is.
To take a step back a little bit from that question, so the modularity of the hull makes it probably its most unique feature of the entire series. With the Hull A having its arms actually outstretched more so from the side, it's the only ship that can actually land with cargo on planets. But the rest of them, since they're actually set up with their booms stretching out in a cross-like pattern, it allows for more cargo to be actually attached onto this, so you can have like cargo off to the side here, up and down, and then depending on the C or the D or the E series, then you can have ones that stretch all the way back across the same booms and armatures, and we just call those either spokes or wheels, right? So with that, the idea with the boxes is that we had the idea of some of our particular components or equipment that could actually be exposed in, for lack of a better term, like a scaffold. So in that way we can have just box-like shapes that are actually exposing a little bit of the components that you actually see on the exterior. And we thought to ourselves, since the E is going to be able to basically pull around these objects of immense size on these massive, massive booms on every one of our particular arms that it's actually situated on, then we can actually possibly put small fighters there, really, if we just maximize the entirety of it. Mm-hmm. So when I actually put that into the engine, I put like a bunch of Hornets side by side, and I noticed on the E I could actually fit like 2.5 Hornets across the entirety of the arm, and we're thinking, wow, okay, I guess in essence you could transport ships on these things, and it makes sense because like if you're like a big rig, you could have like a lot of these cars kind of situated on the back of those big rig kind of trucks that are actually transporting them from manufacturer to just the dealerships, right? So in that way you would have those things situated on that, and it still makes sense even for the Hull series to carry around numerous fighters at a time, but those things are going to be like completely dismantled. They're probably not going to have all their munitions or anything. But if, in essence, you could essentially have people that are preset inside, like there could be like a pirate clan that has actually like a Hull E that has all of its ships in their boxes. But the unboxing time of this, we're going to make it so that it's all physically based. You have to pull everything open. You have to pull it all down, deploy your actual Hornet, and this is probably going to take minutes to deploy. So it's not going to be a fast excursion like I've seen on the forums. Is like, why couldn't these things be like pseudo carriers, right? So with the unboxing in mind, it's very similar to the grabby hands, where it's very, very deliberate. Every particular action that you're doing, you have to basically unfold the particular top. You have to undo all the straps that are keeping you locked into place. You have to actually pull down the scaffolding, and then you have to deploy your particular ship, then leave and making sure that you're not crashing into the other Hornets that are scrambling with you, right? It's not going to be like a 0 to 10 second takeoff that you could probably do in an Idris. It's going to be something that takes a long time to do. So sure, if you have 10 minutes to deploy, go raid a system with a Hull E.
I have a feeling our backers are going to get really good at this. They'll form teams and
Hey, you know what? If it takes 100 people to launch such an assault, I think they deserve it.
I think it's pretty cool. I'd just imagine how difficult recovery would be afterwards. So.
You can't really, because you're basically exposing everything, and it's all being dropped off into space. It's probably going to float away, right? So you can't recover that. You might as well just fly back into base. It's basically a one-time deal, right?
Yeah, it reminds me of like World War II destroyers. Sometimes they'll have like the one seaplane on it. So it's pretty cool.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
So tell me about scaling the hulls, because I know we were involved in this in the last couple of days before the sale.
So the sizing of the all the different hulls was an interesting approach, because we had a few different concept models from Jim Martin, and we were looking at making sure that they had a very similar approach, so we could actually reduce some of the production time and production cost to make it, but we wanted to make sure that they were unique and scalable. So that's where the whole modular approach actually came, in order to make this thing really, really easy to build later on. So with scaling it, we figured that we would want like specific classifications. So we had like the hull A to be equivalent or even better at hauling cargo than the Aurora, but then scaling that up, the B being comparable to like a Freelancer / Constellation, and then C getting even bigger than that, going up to maybe Retaliator size, and then D is even bigger, and then E wasn't even like an actual concept until we started talking about it more and more and more, and thinking, hey, why don't we have something that's, you know, maybe a quarter of the size of a Bengal, right? So then that way, like, we can have something that is of monstrous size, and this actually really helped out actually John Pritchett and Pete Mackey to look at establishing what are our thruster sizes going to be all the way to like capital ship, because we've barely touched like the thruster ratings of what we wanted to do for the Bengal, so this is actually a good stepping stone for us. So when we were actually addressing that, we wanted to make sure that we covered a whole range of ships, going from Aurora all the way up to even like, well, E is a similar in terms of size, as you saw from the orthographic, similar to the Idris, right? So if you had something that could hull just as much cargo as like several different Starfarers all at the same time, then it's even bigger, and something that's more preferable to like a big, massive corporation. So with scaling those, we wanted to make sure that they were still going a little bit exponential, and we measured out some of the ratios, and yes, they're not linear or directly exponential. There are some bigger gaps between like the C and the D, and even the B and the C. There is actually quite a bit of a gap difference between them, but that's really reflected by our cost analysis that we did, right? So in that way, we have like the B being a lot lower of a cost than the C, and then that scales up accordingly, right? So we did our math with that, but we wanted to make sure that we hit more so the particular categories that each one of these ships actually fit into, rather than just this linear scale of A through E.
I think it turned out very well. I just remember watching you resize them until we got it feeling exactly right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's really it. Like, the numbers in the end, some of them, like even with the thruster ratings that we're applying to them, since it is, we're running into a struggle right now with the thruster calculation of these massive, massive ships pushing something of 64 times their own weight in cargo, right? So we're using a mean difference, and there's probably going to be a post later on about this, which is actually what are the weight of these particular ships when they're weighed down with water. And we're using water as a baseline because it fits within the metric system perfectly, because 1 kilogram of water is actually 1 meter cubed in terms of weight versus volume, which is fantastic. So we're using that as like a mean for that, but we're going to be throwing out weight distributions based on iron ore, all the maybe tungsten or whatever. So in that way you would have these wide ranges of masses that you're actually going to be pushing back and forth, which leads into the idea of thruster shunting, which we're going to be probably addressing later, which is actually diverting a lot of your engine power to different areas of your thruster capability for IFCS to be able to move your ship. So we're running into a lot of interesting things that even NASA has to deal with, which is all of your mass plus the mass of your fuel, and then the cargo that you have to move, and then how much force you have behind it, and then when you lose it, how much of a difference in terms of your thrust is that going to be, right? So we're looking at reevaluating a lot of that stuff, especially when it comes to these big sizes of like the hull E. I couldn't even imagine if we actually looked at doing a hull F.
Well, there goes my last question. A particular shout out to Pete Mackey. I remember if you folks are ever wondering why sales can be so late in the evening, it's because we're doing things like reevaluating all the thruster sizes. With a ship holding a mass of water. I think I was on a call like at 8 or 9 that night with you and Pete and Travis, and he was in Austin and trying to calculate all this.
There's a further complication to the weight as well with the mass. Like, you got to remember, each one of these crates, in terms of their SCU, they have, that is their external SCU. So if you look at like even a suitcase, you look at the interior volume, not the exterior volume. But we looked at the exterior volume because you stack all of those things on top of one another. But what we were looking at in terms of the interior volume for all these particular crates is we were using a standard size crate of 3.75 times 2.5 times 2.5, and then that shrinks down by a matter of 0.125 meters on all dimensions. So then that way you have an actual depth to the actual box to provide it some sort of structural support, whatever. But then that is the internals of what you can actually put inside of those boxes. And it was demonstrated a little bit with the grabby hands, but I just wanted to make sure that like a lot of people understand that those volumes inside of your cargo holds, you're putting in crates inside of that, but those crates have their own internal volumes to them. So you have like an inception of like things inside of things inside of things, but you have to accommodate for all that, including the weight of the crates too. So forgive us if our math sometimes is wrong, but there's a lot of things that we have to make sure that we compensate for.
We'll get it right eventually, at least.
Cheers, guys.
Let's end off. What are you working on now?
Right now, still figuring out some of the final sizes for some of the cargo, and we're going to be moving off as soon as we got this all squared away and making sure that we're happy with this. We wanted to then make sure that we extrapolate from what we learned from grabby hands, and then look at doing like a 0G demonstration of moving cargo from a Hull E, and then maybe bringing it over to a space dock, putting in Gold Horizon, or even down to a planet.
Very cool. Well, thank you very much for coming on and talking hulls.
Thanks very much, Ben.
We will see you the next time we release an incredibly complicated design.
Ciao.